Good evening, everyone, and thank you for joining us here in the Shomrei virtual world, the Shomrei virtual shul. So tonight's shir I entitled Tzav and Pesach. So the Parshat Shavua is still on. We still haven't got to Yom Tov. We'll be doing Parshat Tzav this Shabbos. There's something very beautiful about the confluence of where these parashiot in the year fall out. That certain parashiot always fall out before certain Yomim Tovim, and it's not just random. So besides for a leap year, Parshat Tzav is always read on the week of Shabbos Hagadol, on the Shabbos just before Pesach. So I would like to share with you this evening 2/3 connections between our Parshat Tzav and between Pesach, and really in the third one we'll see a connection between Shabbos Hagadol and Parshat Tzav itself. The first one and two are more technical, and the third one more in the realm of Agada, more in the realm of philosophy and ideas. So we'll start with the first connection, which if you look on the source sheets, we read in this week's Parsha, again continuing from last week's Parsha about the Karbanot, and we learn in this specific portion about the Chatos. So in chapter 6, verse 17, we start to talk about the Chatos, and we're told once the Kohanim eat, if they were to put and to cook the parts of the Chatos of the sin offering, they're allowed to eat, and they cook it for themselves. Then what happens with the vessels? We say, so Karbanot become what's called Nosa. So there's a little bit of background about, Kodshim, that after the time period, the carbon is allowed to be eaten. A day, 2 days, 2 nights, 1 day, whatever it might be. After that time period, the Karbanot become Nosa and Pigol and things like that, and they're forbidden to be used. And therefore, if you cook the meat of the carbon in your vessels, obviously done in a tahar way, in a proper way, nonetheless, the blios, just like we have, with kashrut, you have a fleshik, a meaty pan and pot, and a milky pan and pot, one makes it meaty or milky, because when I cook food in it, there's something called blios. The residue from the food goes into the walls of the pot, halakha tells us, and it turns that pot into either fleshik or milchik pot. So too, when you cook the meat of kodshim, you cook the meat of the carbon in your pot, the blios bleeds into the pot. And now you've got an issue, because I've got part of the carbon, I've got the residue of the carbon now left over beyond when the carbon is no longer allowed. And after the carbon is no longer allowed, it actually becomes problematic. It has to be destroyed, it has to be burnt, has to be got rid of. You're not allowed to use it. So you're going to end up, the Kohen's going to cook his carbon in his vessels at home. And after the time period of the carbon is over, he's going to end up having in his vessels residue, the bliot of the carbon in the vessel, so he has to somehow get rid of it. He cannot use the vessel now for other cooking, because when he cooks again, like you cook in the fleshik pot, the bliot come back into the food, and you're going to have a problem. So what does the Torah tell us? Now, if he cooked in a earthenware vessel, yishaveh, he has to destroy it, because there's no way of kashering an earthen vessel, as we know. However, if he cooked his carbon, the meat of his sacrifice, or the meat he was given from the sacrifice, in a metal pot, nechoshes, copper pot, umorak. So umorak means he has to expunge it, meaning he has to get rid of it through boiling it or through heat. V'shutaf b'mayim, and he also has to wash it with water. It has to be washed down with water, i.e., a mikveh type of a procedure. So that is the verse. That's what we learn in this week's Parsha. It's very specific, relevant to the Karbanot and the Kohanim eating the Karbanot in their vessels. But the Rambam, there's a connection to Pesach here. So the Rambam in source 2 in Chametz Umatzah, the laws of Chametz Umatzah, tells us as follows. So, as we know, and that's actually where the halachas of kashering kedim throughout the year, from treif to kosher, actually are modeled on the halachas found in Hilchas Pesach. So let's say you have a metal vessel or a stone vessel that you've used for chametz, and you used it hot with kli rishon, could go in kederis for alfasen. So what do? So you do what's called hagola. You fill up a big vat of boiling water, and then you dunk in your vessels, your chametz pots, into this hot cauldron of boiling water, and that way you've done hagola you've managed to get rid of the chametz in the chametz residue in the pot. But it's not enough for the Rambam when it comes to chametz and matzah. When it comes to Pesach, you have to kasher it like we usually kasher a keli. You have to do hagala. You put it in this boiling water. You also have to wash it down with cold water, and then you can use it for matzah. You can use it, i.e., on Pesach. However, in distinction, points out Rav Soloveitchik, when it comes to machalas hasuras, usual laws of kashrus, what does the Rambam write? Ketzan magir, and how you do hagala, how you do this process of a vessel that's been used through hot water, through boiling food in it, cooking food through means of water in it. What do you do? No senora katana, the same process. By i.e., you either dunk it into a hot vat of water, or you make it in a certain way. You fill the vessel with water and you let the hot water boil over. But here there is no mention of needing to therefore wash them off afterwards, but sonain with cold water. This is in distinction to Tosfos. So Tosfos in the end of Zvachim tells us, Lo tzrichim et amamam riko shtifa b'tzonein, acha agola ha'afilu v'cham pirush truma sagi b'agola v'loi bo'im riko shtifa b'tzonein. Umeshani shtifa yeseirosa detzarich lasos b'koshum shtifa yeseiro acha agola masha ein kein b'truma. So here it's talking about specifically b'truma. Tosfos, is quoting and referencing our pasuk in our parsha that yes, when it comes to kodshim, there is a special halacha that you have to, even after you've kashered it, using the usual means of hagala, of boiling it, of putting it in a hot vat of boiling water, nonetheless, and by kodshim, you have to then shtifa b'mayim, you have to wash it off with cold water. Tosfos is saying that's not true by anything else. It's not even true. I think I've cut out the words here, but Tosfos makes reference to chametz. When it comes to Pesach, there isn't even any need on Pesach to wash it off the tzonin, and that is actually how we pass it. But nonetheless, for the Rambam, you see there's this connection between kashering a vessel on Pesach. There's not just enough to kasher it. Usual means that we use the rest of the year for kashering something from meat to milk or non-kosher to kosher. You have to kasher vessels for Pesach, just like you kasher a vessel for kodshim, they have to have this shtifa b'mayim b'tzonein, you have to wash it off with cold water afterwards. Why is that this case? Rav Soloveitchik explained in Lomdus, at least in halachic thinking, that when it came to kodshim, you're right. You see, by regular kashrus, the dunking in hot water, which makes a lot of sense. It's the general rule of just the method you use a vessel, that is how you kasher it. So if you cook food with boiling hot water, and it's now either non-kosher or it's meat and you want to make it milk, whatever, it's chametz and you want to make a Pesach, the logical way now to reclaim it or to turn it back from what it was or to change over the use is to now kasher it the method it was used generally. But this idea of washing it again with water afterwards is an extra thing, it's an added on thing, and it's an indicator. In halacha, what in Lomdus Rav Soloveitchik called a matir. It's not just enough to put it through the process that kashers it, but there are certain types, there are certain categories, and high-level categories, kodshim being the highest level, the things that we use for the uses of the Beis Hamikdash, the things that are offered on the temple. It's not enough just to kasher it, but you need a matter, you need an extra thing to show you that you've used it for something holy, used it for something specific, and now you're using it for something profane, you're using it for another lesser use altogether, which is not the case with general kashrus, moving it from meat to milk or non-kosher to kosher. And that is so too, according to the Rambam, for Pesach. From chametz to Pesach, there is not just enough to kasher it using the usual methods, that I kasher it in the same method as the way I usually cook it. You could cook it with boiling hot water, kasher with boiling hot water. If I were to need to do, I cook it with fire, I have to kasher with naked fire. There's an extra level needed here, which is the shittuf b'tzonein, washing it with cold water, because somehow there's needs of a matir. To use something for Pesach is a completely different level. There's all these levels of chumrah, of stringency. It's qualitatively, not just quantitatively, it's qualitatively a different experience, a different usage altogether. And just like by kodshim, you need the shtifa b'mayim, so too by Pesach, according to the Rambam, you need to also wash it off with cold water. And that's perhaps why we specifically read the portion of Tzav, which has this portion, this unique halacha by kodshim, on the Shabbos before Pesach, which also shares that unique halacha. The second connection is a very small connection. We read the Zevach Todah Shlomim B'Yom Karbono Ye'ochel, when the Torah tells us in this week's portion, again, it's talking about the time frame for eating the various karbonot. We're told when it comes to the Zevach Todah Shlomim, it's Shlomim, a peace offering, B'Yom Karbono Ye'ochel. You have to eat it on the day you bring it. Lo Yaniach Memein Raboke, you can't leave it over until morning. And the Ramban quotes Rashi here, Yesh kan ribuyim harbe. So from this verse, there's actually a lot of inferences. There's a lot of things we're including here. Chatos va'asham ve'el nozeh v'chagigas harba'asa. Various different types of karbanot, of sacrifices, the sin offering, the Nazarite offering, and chagigas harba'asa, the unique chagiga, the unique festive offering that was brought on the 14th. So on the other festivals, on Sukkot, it would have been on the 15th. It would have been brought on the day of the first day of Sukkot. Was chagigas harba'asa. This is a reference to the festival offering that was brought on the 14th of Nisan on Erev Pesach, i.e. alongside the Karban Pesach. That they can be eaten for one day and one night. He quotes Rashi, but the Ramban disagrees because he says he said that the Chagiga, this festive offering that was brought on Erev Pesach alongside the Karban Pesach, actually can be eaten for longer, for 2 days and one night. And then he actually brings a different opinion that no, that it has to be eaten in exactly the same time frame as the Pesach itself. Just as the Pesach has to be eaten and finished before Chatzos, so too the Chagigas Arba'asa, the meat, and possibly that this was brought in order that people should eat that as their main course, because we say that the Karban Pesach has to be eaten a la Soveya. That's why the Afikomen comes at the end of the meal. The Karban Pesach, because they couldn't break the bones, they had to be eaten not when you're, ravaging hungry, but you have to be somewhat satisfied. You have to leave enough room. You have to be satisfied. So therefore, they bring chagigas arba'asa. They bring a whole grouping of karbonot. They bring this carbon alongside the Karban Pesach in order to have that as the main bulk of the meal. And therefore, the Ramban says there's an opinion that says this specific sacrifice shares the halachas of the Karban Pesach itself. Again, another connection we see between the verses in us this week's Parsha and Parshat Tzav, the Parsha we read just before Pesach, and the specific halachos, at least we don't have nowadays, but were at least in the time of the Beis Hamikdash, the halachos that were pertinent to the very days in the coming days ahead, in the days of Erev Pesach. The main part of the show I'd like to share with you is a third approach, a bit more of an Agadic approach, and this is something I saw in the writings of Rosh Shlomo Fisher, who is alive today, one of the Rosh Yeshivas in Yeshivat Itri, who is a major, a major Talmid Chacham, especially in the world of Machshavas, he saw Jewish thought. He's got an incredible sefer called the Beis Yishai. That's his sefer on Drushes, Beis Yishai. I heard from Rav Asher Weiss that he felt this was the greatest Drush sefer, the greatest sefer of drushes since the Chasam Sofer's drushes. Chasam Sofer wrote a famous set of drushes. So from Rav Asher Weiss claims that, since those days in the early 1800s till, nowadays, which was produced about 15, 20 years ago, the Sefer is one of the greatest works of Rosh. He really got incredible ideas in there. So I tell you, so the connection begins here. I'm actually going to share with you another thing for one moment. So in this week's Parsha, we also have the Parsha of the Karban Todah. So we spoke about in Parshas Vayikra, last week's Parsha, various different karbanot, various different sacrifices, but we didn't talk about the Todah. So in this week's Parsha, we get to the Karban Todah. So these are the various different peace offerings one brings. And what could it be? Imal ha-Todah yakriven. There's a category of peace offering that's called the Todah, a thanksgiving offering. And the Todah offering was unique, because alongside the animal sacrifice was brought a certain amount of bread. So chalus matzos belulos Hashem and rukike matzos shruchim, different types of bread. So if you look here on the Rashi here, what does Rashi say? What's imal todah yakrivenu? What was one bringing a thanksgiving offering for? Imal davar hodah al nation asala. So this was a category. This was a type of carbon, a type of sacrifice that was brought as a thanksgiving, specifically as a thanksgiving for a miracle that occurred for him. Kagon Yode Hayom, someone who'd gone down to the sea, i.e. traversed the sea. Volchem Midbar, someone who traveled across the wilderness. V'chavusha Beis V'asurim, someone who's been incarcerated in prison. V'cholish Nisrapi, someone who was deathly ill and has become healed. Shein Srichen Odos, these are the four people that need to give thanks. Shekosel Behem Yodul Hashem Chasel V'nifla Oisov Livnei Adam Yizbuchu Zivchei Todah, based on the verse in chapter 107 Tehillim, which many have the custom to say on Yom Ha'atzmaut. This is like the chapter of Tehillim that's spoken about, that's recited on Yom Ha'atzmaut. The Jewish people went through these 4 types of experiences, have to thank God for the miracles on the land of Israel, the state of Israel. And the Gemara in Brachos extends this, and probably pretty familiar. These are the 4 categories that we say a Birchas HaGomel on. So the blessing of a Gomel is modeled on the bringing of a carbon total, the thanksgiving offering. And so that's what the thanksgiving is all about. Then we say, so I guess it's unique, because alongside the meat, the animal of the carbon, there's bread that's brought as well. And there's 4 types of breads. So there were 3 non-chometz aspects, 3 sets. There were 40 breads, so 30 of them were matzah, were non-chometz. And then there was the fourth category, the last 10 were chometz, were chometz type of bread. Okay, so that's the introduction. That's this week's parsha. The portion the Torah tells us about the korban toda, about the thanksgiving offering. Sorry, I need to share with you, going back to what we had before. So let's go back to the source sheet before. Okay, so here we start. So this interesting here. So the Orach Chaim, so the Shulchan Aruch tells us, source 6, the Shabbos Lifnei Pesach kohen is Shabbos Hagodol. So the Shabbos before Pesach, this Shabbos is called Shabbos Hagodol. Why is it called Shabbos Hagodol? Again, there's a miracle. So we just spoke about the korban toda, the thanksgiving offering, being brought on miracles. So Shabbos Hagodol is the great Shabbos because there's a great miracle that occurred on it. And on this halach in the Shulchan Aruch, Haggadah, the Ramah Isserlis, who wrote, I saw the Ashkenazi addendum to Shulchan Aruch. What did he write? What does he say? The minhag is, I think in our shul as well, many have the custom to say on Shabbos Hagodol at Mincha time to say the Haggadah. It's a few days before Pesach. Nonetheless, we crack open the Haggadahs and we read not the whole Haggadah. We say a part or a large part of Magid on Shabbos Hagodol. All right, interesting minhag to already start to say the Haggadah already on Shabbos Hagodol before Pesach. The Biur Halacha quotes, so that's the Mishnah Berurah quotes, V'shem Hagra Kosu. So the Gra writes, Shaloi hayonahig bazeh, not to have this custom. Why? Because the Haggadah itself has this, suggestion. That maybe you can start to recite the Haggadah already by daytime. Again, there'll be this year the Zoom Pesach Seder, where people have suggested this year to actually do some of the Haggadah. I mean, obviously to repeat it after nightfall, but for the sake of bringing families together and especially those on the road to have a shared Pesach experience, to do it before Yom Tov comes in, 5 o'clock in the afternoon to this year. What is it? It's 5:30, 6 o'clock. But the Haggadah itself says, maybe you can start already saying it before, during the afternoon of Erev Pesach. The Haggadah tells us, no, you have to say the Haggadah what? You can only say Haggadah when? At the time you've got the matzah mora in front of you, Korban Pesach in front. Are you only after night? Okay, so the Gra says, I don't understand. Why are you saying the Haggadah on Shabbos Hagodol 3, 4, 5 days, whatever it is before Pesach? You're not allowed to say the Haggadah. There's no value, there's no worth of saying, even on Erev Pesach, even a few hours before, it's not worthwhile. So why are we doing it a few days before? Okay, so interesting. We got this minhag and we got the Biur Halacha. The Gra says, I don't understand this minhag. What's the point of saying it all these days before? Moving on, the Chasam Sofer quotes from the Abarbanel on the question of Manishtana. Interesting. What is the questions of Manishtana? Abarbanel generally has a very interesting approach to Manishtana. I mentioned his understanding of what the questions are in the Haggadah highlight share. You can go back and listen to that. But the Abarbanel understands the first question. What's the first question? Manishtana halayla zemekal halayla shebachal halaylos anu ochtim chometz u'matzah. On all other nights, we have chometz and matzah. On this night, we only have matzah. Now, Abarbanel says that the child's question is actually quite a profound one. It's a deeper one. It's one with a lot of discerning and a lot of understanding. What is the question? Lama ein lechem im hakorban Pesach? Kiven shehi korban toda. What is the question? The korban Pesach, this sacrifice we're bringing on Erev Pesach. Everyone was obliged to bring each and every year the Korban Pesach, this Paschal lamb, the same as they brought on that year they left Egypt. God tells Moshe the first mitzvah they're given in Egypt, take Mishchu L'chulachem, take for yourself, separate yourself out already a few days before. Every person should take the Egyptian god, should take a sheep, should take an aze, should take a goat, take it for the Korban Pesach. What is that Korban all about? Tells us the Abarbanel, and it's based on many other sources, that really in essence it's a Korban Toda. As I already said, that Shabbos HaGadol is called Shabbos HaGadol, the great Shabbos HaGadol is the miracle. We're celebrating a great miracle that God did for us. He took us out of Egypt. We did more than just traversing the sea and traversing the desert. We did all of those. We traversed the desert, we traversed the sea, we crossed the sea, in the sea. We went from Beis Hasurim. We were prisoners and we were incarcerated in the prison. God took us out with free people. Chayla, we were sick and He made us whole again. Korban Pesach, in other words, is a Korban Toda, is a thanksgiving offering. And if we saw in our Parsha, when it comes to a thanksgiving offering, there's 40 breads, 30 which are Pesach, which are not Chometz, but there's 10 which are Chometz. The child turns around and he says, wait a minute, tonight we're bringing the Korban Pesach, and it's a Korban Toda, it's a thanksgiving offering. If every other time we bring a thanksgiving offering, we bring it with 40 breads, including matzah, Chometz breads, on all other nights, on all other times we bring a Korban Toda, a thanksgiving offering, Chometz and matzah, we have both Chometz and matzah bread. Halayla hazeh kulei matzah. What's going on? We're not listening to what the Torah tells us about the laws and the halachas of a Korban Toda. Why is it tonight only 30 bread? Why is it tonight only matzah? Why are we not bringing the breads, the Chometz breads, as well? So that's a very deep, deeper understanding what the question of the child is. And it's interesting that the Shulchan Aruch says, Ein echiv ela matzah ela balayla, after night. What does the Ramah say? V'noagu la'aseh shleisha matzah shal seder mi'isoron. So the minhag is, the halacha is, the custom is to have the matzah on Seder night, 3 matzahs, made out of isoron, a certain type of fine flour. Why? Zeicha lelachmei toda, as a remembrance for the lachmei toda. We today don't have the meat of the Korban Pesach. We don't have the Toda element. We can't bring the meat like they would bring the Korban Pesach corresponding to the Korban Toda. So we make other things corresponding to the Korban Toda. The way we make hamatzahs are corresponding to the way they make the Toda breads. And furthermore, if you think about it, 3 matzahs corresponding to the 3 out of 4 parts of the Korban Toda breads you can bring on Seder night. Again, you can't bring the 4th part, the last 25%, which is Chometz. But maybe the 3 matzahs correspond to the 3 lots of matzah, Korban Toda matzahs that you would bring alongside the Korban Toda. And the truth is, if this is the question of the child, why is it we don't have the Chometz bread on Pesach? We don't answer him. What do we say? We were slaves to Pharaoh in Egypt and God took us out from there. Just as an aside, Shlomo Fisher brings from Rav Nachman of Bratslav, the blessed of a Rebbe, the first blessed of a Rebbe. One second line after this point. What does he say? What are we answering what are we saying to the child? The child asks these questions and we don't answer him. We're answering, Avodim hayinu leFaro b'Mitzrayim. We were slaves to Pharaoh in Egypt. And we're reliving that, reenacting that. We are slaves. We're going through this process. And a slave isn't allowed to ask questions. What it means to be a slave, what it means to live without freedom, is the ability not to ask. You're not allowed to question. You're not allowed to debate. Just today I was reading I'm working my way through Rabbi Sax's newest book, Morality, and he's got a chapter there on arguments for the sake of heaven. He's got a whole thing about safe space and about universities and how they've become places which are not safe to debate freely. He says where you lose the ability to debate freely and ask questions and to challenge another person's beliefs, then you don't have a free society anymore. Says Rav Nachman, Avodim hayinu. You ask these questions, child. You want answers? You won't get answers. That's what it means to be a slave. That's what it means to not live in a free society. You cannot ask questions, and you won't definitely get answers. Yeah, Lionel, you want to unmute yourself? Yeah.
Yeah. So the question of the Bible is quite difficult because actually we know that the Korban Toda wasn't brought on Erev Pesach. It wasn't brought on Pesach at all. That's why we don't say Mizmor Soda on Erev Pesach, because if you can't bring all the carbon, you can't bring any of the carbon. So that's what
we're saying. The Korban Pesach is a substitute. You're right. You can't bring the usual Korban Toda on Pesach, but it's a substitute. Correct. On the other hand, a child might not have that sensitivity. Again, the child he's asking what he sees. So the child is saying, It's basically a carbon toida. We are treating it like a carbon toida. It's a Thanksgiving carbon toida. So why isn't there bread? Why don't we have bread? Okay, yeah. You're right, technically it's true. We don't bring carbon toida, hence we don't say we don't say it. But you'll see there's a more profound reason why there's no carbon toida per se over Pesach. So let's move on. Okay, so we'll just leave out source 10 and leave out source 11. Okay, so so how do we answer this? So how are we to understand about this connection between the carbon toida, this week's Parshat, and Pesach, and the lack of the fourth element of the Pesach bread? And another question is, why is it we don't have the fifth cup? Why is there no fifth cup of wine? Because if you look at the verses in the beginning of Va'era, we have the four cups based on those four expressions of redemption. There's a fifth verse. The fifth expression. So God, I will bring you to the land of Israel. That's his fifth expression. God says, I've got Ga'alti, I've saved you, I've redeemed you. And then there's a fifth one, and I'll bring you to the land of Edom. And furthermore, similarly, the Haggadah is modeled on Aram Ye'ovid, that parsha of the bringing of the Bikurim, of the first fruits. The farmer brings the first fruits, and he brings them to Jerusalem, and in a Thanksgiving ceremony, he declares this whole declaration. He gives a history of the Jewish people. God took us out of Egypt. We were, already in the house of Laban, and then we were in Egypt, and we were oppressed, and God took us out, and he saved us. But the fifth verse, we also don't mention in the Haggadah. The fifth verse, like the fifth cup, which we don't do, is that what? Then what do we say? The farmer then says, conclude. Now, and God not only took us out of Egypt and saved us, he brought us to this land, and he gave us the land, and this is the fruit that I'm able to grow. This is the produce I'm able to develop in this land of Egypt. So again, on Seder night, we don't have that fifth verse in the parsha of Magid, and we don't have that fifth cup of wine. And what is the parsha of Bikurim? It's interesting. We use the parsha of Bikurim rather than taking the verses from Shemos Va'era Bo, where the story of the Exodus is told and is being lived. We take a retrospective viewpoint. We take those verses, again, it's much shorter, so we're thankful for that, but we take these verses which are a retrospective viewpoint. Why is that? So the verse tells us, source 12, about the farmer bringing the fruits, and you have to come to the Kohen and bring your first fruits. He makes this declaration. Says Rashi, what does it mean? You should say to him, what is the purpose of the first fruits? What is it all about? Why do we bring Bikurim? Why do we bring them to the Kohen? It's all about thanksgiving. It's all about recognizing, yes, I toiled the land, I worked all winter through to develop, to plant these trees and to prune the trees and to make sure the fruits come forth. And now I've harvested these fruits, but the first fruits I'm going to offer to God because I recognize that it's from Him. We're not a people who are kofu tova, who deny the good, who don't recognize the hand of God in our life. Because when we don't recognize the hand of God, it's source 13, that's when Amalek comes along. Meaning, Rashi explains this, when the Jewish people turn around to Moshe and they said, where is God? Why is he not providing for us? Why are we in this precarious situation in the wilderness? That's when Amalek comes along. It has the mashal, the parable of the child that the father puts on his shoulders and he's saving him from the lion, and the child's asking everybody, where's my father? Where's my father? Your father's the one who's saving you. The father's the one who got you, carrying you on your shoulders. That's why Amalek come along. The Jewish people are kofu tova. They're thankless. They don't respond properly. They're not thankful that they should be to God, and therefore they are kofu tova to God. But there's two elements of being not thankful. On the one hand, you could just not say thank you. On the other hand, another way to be not properly thankful is wanting to repay the debt straight away. Meaning someone does something for you, and rather than just accepting the gift, thankfully, gratefully, you try to repay the favor straight away. You try to give them something back. You try to, get them out of your debt. You feel in debt to them, they're giving you something, so you don't want to feel indebted to someone. But that's also a level of not being thankful. Because it's okay to be, if someone wants to give you something, you recognize you're in debt. Being thankful means I recognize I'm in debt for you. I recognize you've done something good for me, and I'm not trying to easily and quickly just repay the debt, so I don't have to recognize my indebtedness to you. Again, the Gemara Avodah Zarah, we'll have to skip it for the purpose of time. it makes that exact point. What is the proper response? The proper response is Ma'ashiv Lashem Kol Tagmuloi Aloikus Yishois Hasav Hashem Hashem Ikra. Ma'ashiv Lashem, how can I respond to Hashem? Kol Tagmuloi Aloi. And we say in Hallel, for all that He has bestowed upon me, I raise the glass to God and I thank Him. To properly thank is to receive, and to receive gratefully, to recognize you're indebted to that person, and then later on, only later on, at some later point, to turn around after you've been able to recognize and think about and to be gracious and to see the goodness the other person has done for you, and then later to properly thank, to properly repay, to properly come in thanksgiving. And what was the Jewish people's response to Yetzias Mitzrayim? God does this unbelievable miracle for us, and He does it all for us. He takes us out of Egypt with amazing miracles and wonders. He takes us as a people. He gives us the Torah. He leads us through the wilderness for 40 years, bestowing us with all that we need. How do we properly repay Him? We properly repay Him with the land of Israel. Yes, the land of Israel is God's gift to us, but it's unique. It's unique in its way that we were active partners in it. Because when it came to the Exodus, God doesn't say, do your bit. God doesn't say, fight Pharaoh. God takes care of it fully. In the wilderness, God doesn't say, on your way. He sends manna from heaven and the wealth of Miriam's well and everything, the clouds of glory to protect us. But suddenly, when it comes to the greatest gift of all, the most important thing, the purpose of it all, the land of Israel establishing a Jewish state, a Jewish homeland, God says, no, now you're on your own. I'll help you, but you have to fight. Your impetus is to fight the people of the land. It's to conquer it yourself. Why? Because God, yes, gives us the land of Israel as a gift, but God says, but you taking up arms, you playing an active role in conquering that gift, in cultivating that gift, in making that gift, that raw gift, the land as a gift, making it real, actualizing and making it something prosperous, making it something successful. That's the way you thank me for everything I've done for you until this point. And why is it so? Because we say, actually this is part of, it says this is in the Parshat, just after the Bikurim, the portion of the Bikurim, God brought us to this place. The farmer thanks God. He says, God brought us to this place. What's Hamakom Hazeh? This is the temple. And He gave us the land. Says Rashi, the land. And it's very interesting. We first thank God for the temple and then the land. Surely the land came before the temple. We had the land like 300-400 years before we had the temple. And the answer is because obviously the purpose of the land of Israel is a dual one. On the one hand, it's a land, it's a national homeland, it's a place where we cultivate, we grow, we live, we build a society. But ultimately, it's about Beis HaMikdash. It's about making a home for God, a Dira B'Tachtonim, a place where God can be manifest in this world. And that's only we can do that. God can give birth to us, and He can create us as a people, and He can instruct us with the Torah. But what God cannot do is willingly and willfully insert Himself into mankind, into human affairs. We have to invite God into human affairs. When we build up Israel, and we build it with the purpose of making it a Beis HaMikdash, a place for God's presence, we are thanking God. God, you did this all for us. This is our way to repay the favor. This is our way to say, we're now inviting you back into this world. It's our way of being makeh tov, of being thankful and being appreciative for that which God has done for us. And it's important that we seek out Israel. That's why Israel isn't just a gift. We have to seek it out. That both the Sifri tells us in nowhere in the Torah are we told where to build the Beis HaMikdash. It's not actually revealed that the Beis HaMikdash, the temple, is going to be built on Temple Mount in Jerusalem. So what do we say? You have to seek it out through a prophet. Ask the prophet, where is it to be? Said the Sifri, unbelievable. Maybe the Jewish people should sit back and wait. Wait till the prophet comes to you and reveals to you and tells you where to build the Beis HaMikdash. Talmud, the verse actually tells us no. The Shechno Sidrushu, the Shechno, for the place of the Shechina, for that dwelling place of God, Tidrushu, you shall seek it out, and then you shall come there. To Rosh Matzah, you should seek it out, whatever means you have. Umatzah, you first find it. The Navi will then tell you whether you've found and you've actually revealed the right place. I.e., building the Beis Hamikdash, building up Israel, our part for God, bringing God into this world by building a home for Him here, isn't enough that we just wait and sit and wait till we're told what to do. The Rosh Hashanah, we have to actively take part, very different than the Exodus and the Yetzias Mitzrayim, the sojourn in the wilderness. It's our active involvement. And the Ramban said a similar thing by Avram Avinu, right? The Avram Avinu, God never reveals him. He said, Lech lecha, go to a certain place, but he never reveals where to go. And the Medrash tells us Abraham sort of bounced around from place to place looking for the right place. He didn't know. He went to this land and that land until he came to the right place. Why is that true? Because just like when it comes to building the Beis Hamikdash, we had to seek it out. It had to be a journey of discovery. We had to discover that place. So too Abraham in discovering the land of Israel to begin with. So when it came to the Jewish people, we knew that Canaan, the land of Israel, was our homeland. All we didn't know is where the second level, the place of the Beis Hamikdash, was supposed to be. For Abraham, we didn't even know where the Jewish homeland was supposed to be. He also, again, like we had to seek out the Beis Hamikdash, the place of the temple. He had to seek out that land to begin with, because already from our very beginning, that land of Israel had to be our active role, had to be our active investment, had to be our active project. We had to seek it. We had to seek it out. And therefore, that makes a lot of sense why on Pesach there's no mention of the fifth cup, which is the cup of Vehevesiaschem. I'm going to bring you to the land of Israel, where there's no mention. We don't utilize, we don't quote the fifth verse in the Parshat of the Bikurim, which talks about, now God has given us this land, because Pesach is a very different celebration, is a very different stage. Pesach is a celebration of what God does for us. So that about the miracles God has enacted on our behalf, where we are completely passive partners. The land of Israel, coming to the land, that fifth cup, that fifth verse, that next stage is a very different model. It's the flip side. It's about what we do for God. It's our active involvement. It's how we repay God's favor. On Pesach, we just sit back and we're appreciative and we recognize what God has done for us. Because if we were too quick, if we're already talking about what we've done for God, how we repaid the favor, that's also called kofu tova. There's also not being thankful. Because that shows we're trying to get the burden off our back. We're trying to get the debt of gratitude off us. On Pesach, we sit, we raise up the 4 cups of wine and appreciation and thankfulness. Look what God has done for us. Only 7 weeks later, on Shavuos, that's when we have the Parsha of Bikurim. That is actually when the farmer will bring the Bikurim. That is when we turn around and say, God, look what we've done for you. You did the Exodus for us, asking for us now to be actively involved in the building up of the land of Israel. We do that for you, and that's Shavuos. And hence, on Pesach, we bring 3 out of the 4 parts of the Lachmei Toda. We bring only the non-chometz elements. Why? What is the difference between matzah and chometz? Matzah is passive, as we know. Why do we have matzah? One of the reasons, there wasn't time for the bread to break, meaning we didn't do anything. It baked on its own as matzah. You put flour and water together and you put it in the sun or you put it in the hot fire and it cooks as it is. Bread, chometz, denotes an active ingredient. Either you have to put in an active ingredient to make it ferment, to make it arise, i.e. so you have to put in the yeast, or human. You have to knead it, you have to work on it, you have to be actively involved with it, you have to develop it in order to make chometz. And therefore the Torah represents these 2 elements. There's 3/4 of it as matzah, where we're passive, thanking God for what He's done for us, where we were totally passive partners. And that's Pesach, where we were the passive partners. We just recognize all that God did for us in the Exodus. And hence on Pesach, alongside the Korban Pesach, which is our Korban Toda, which is our thanksgiving offering, we only have matzah. We only have unleavened bread. What the child is asking, why on this night, when this unique Korban Toda, with this unique thanksgiving offering, there isn't that 4th element. We don't have any chometz. We don't have this other type of bread. But when do we bring the last remaining part of the Korban Toda breads? It needs to be brought. It's brought on Shavuos. What is the Korban of Shavuos? Shtei halechem. It's dafka, the only time in the Beis Hamikdash where chometz was brought, the 2 leavened breads, which were the unique Korban of Shavuos. On Shavuos, 7 weeks later, we've given it time to sink in, to show our appreciation. 7 weeks later, that's when we say to God, here's the chometz element of the Korban. Here's the final bit of the thanksgiving offering. We're thanking you and we're showing you, we're so thankful for what you did for us. we were able to do something back for you, i.e., we were able to build up the base Hamikdash, and hence that's why on Pesach we have the three elements. We only have the matzah part of the carbon toda, but we don't have the chametz element of it. Time doesn't allow, but in the last few sources, what I brought is that there's also a connection here between the Haftorah of Malachi Gimel, of Va'arval Hashem Minchas Yehuda of Yerushalayim, which talks about, the Mincha of Jerusalem and of Yehuda and Jerusalem, it's about the rebuilding of the temple, Malachi, that last prophet. And we don't have time. Maybe another time when we revisit this shir, we revisit this idea, we'll share this connection between the Toda and the Chometz and the Matzah and our part and God's part in connection to the Haftorah as well as the Parsha. But again, we see a unique and very tight connection between the portion of Toda in this week's Parsha, brought on those four things, and the connection and the symmetry with Pesach. Again, Pesach celebrating those very four things that the Jewish people went through collectively. The Pesach being a carbon toda, but a unique carbon toda, one which only has matzah, one which is only about the passive thanksgiving, what God does to us, and therefore we wait till Shavuos for the fifth cup, which we don't have at the Seder night, the fifth verse, which we don't expound, the Chometz Chalus, the Chometz element of the carbon toda, which waits till Pesach, which corresponds to the land of Israel. It's, Rabbi Sachs writes about this a lot in his covenant and ceremony and celebration. How Shavuos is really the festival of the land, the festival of the land of Israel. It becomes later about Torah, but in the temple times it was about the land. It's about our active part, because unlike the Exodus, unlike Mitzrayim, unlike Pesach, Shavuos and Eretz Yisrael is where we took an active part. We seeked it out to Rosh Umatzah. You have to actively seek out the land of Israel. And that's the time now to bring the Chometz elements of the carbon toda, that final piece, to fully thank God, to fully give a full thanksgiving for the miracles He bestowed upon us. Okay, let me stop the recording.